Yes, once again, we have liftoff. I want to thank you to tuning into this episode of the Big Truth Podcast. And I want to welcome my guest today, Dr. Yafi Yair, who has a multifaceted background. She's a clinical psychologist, a channel, multidimensional channel, a hypnotist, an author, and someone who I find this very interesting. Your background as someone that's a scientist, but also as someone who's so deep into the spiritual realm of things. So,
Yes, the age of Aquarius is here.
there you go. Yeah, so we can talk about the interplay between those two realms, because they can be different, but they can also be mutually exclusive, or they can be or they can go off one of each other pretty well, play off
Yes,
each other.
absolutely.
So for our listeners that might not be familiar with you, why don't you give a little bit of give us a little bit about your background and how you even got into all this stuff, like both the psychology and also the spiritual elements of things.
Yes, absolutely. So I did, as you mentioned, I'm a clinical psychologist. That means I went through a whole training of becoming a doctor in clinical psychology, which
Yeah.
is 11 years of very left brain analytical training and way of thinking. And while that was happening, I kind of put aside my more creative, intuitive side, although it's been with me since I was a little girl, since I can ever remember. And in 2012, I was still doing my training. So I graduated in 2014. So we're talking 2 years before I graduated. I had this major spiritual awakening. First, it started as just an interest. I was just so interested in anything spiritual, anything paranormal. I discovered the Seth material, which was absolutely mind expanding and incredible. And let's see what else happened in my life. I discovered hypnosis. So that was a beautiful way for me to bring my new interest of spirituality into the clinical field that I was practicing as a psychologist, doing therapy and testing, really mainstream stuff, until I discovered hypnosis, which totally sparked my fascination.
Mm.
And I started going, oh, and then in 2012, my mom, who was my absolute best friend, transitioned. And it happened very quickly. She went from a healthy 63-year-old woman to diagnosed with cancer without even knowing which kind of cancer. Within 2 months, she was gone. So it happened very, very quickly. It was a big shock, but also a huge push to delve even more deeply into the spiritual journey, into experiencing things for myself, my desire to know what's beyond and to believe in spiritual reality, not just as an interesting idea, but as a reality, as a practice, as an experience. That really became very real when my
Mm.
mom transitioned. And I started going to the Monroe Institute about a year before that. I started meditating daily. So it really all kind of happened together from different directions. And spirituality became my life purpose and my journey. And
Mm.
that's when I realized that I could no, I cannot be a mainstream psychologist. So I graduated in 2014 and I had to make a decision. Until then, I was working for other people. So I was as mainstream as it gets. And now it was time to work for myself. I wanted to work for myself and I wanted to do my own thing. And that I realized could not be. I could not really fulfill my passion by remaining a mainstream psychologist. I had to take it in a different direction. I had to take it beyond. I had to go deeper than what the field allowed, maybe still allows, but it was definitely even more strict and square when I graduated.
Sure.
So I
And,
decided, yeah, go ahead.
no, and that's what I was going to ask. Like, when you were studying psychology and you were going through your doctorate program, was there what was your because I know there's a lot of areas of that. Like, what was your area of specialization, and did spirituality creep into that at all, or was it just like until after you graduated and after you left the general field, then you started integrating both? Like, because I was going to say, like, I'd feel like, because I went through part of graduate school in anthropology, and
Oh, anthropology was my minor. I love anthropology.
yeah, and I know the environment of like some of these institutions, and I can imagine that there would be a lot of if you were trying to integrate parapsychology or anything like that into a regular program, there might have been a little bit of resistance there, for lack of to put it mildly.
Yes, definitely putting it mildly. There was a lot of resistance, even just to integrate mainstream psychology. And we're not even talking spiritual psychology, even clinical psychology, even integrating that into the regular practice. You had to find specialized supervisors that were comfortable with that. And it wasn't easy. There would be like one in the whole program. So people were still not comfortable even accepting hypnosis as an accepted science, accepted therapy. So absolutely, and when you talk about past life regression or spiritual exploration, we were specifically directed by the American Psychological Association, because my first training in hypnosis was through the clinical field. So we were trained that if people come to us and ask about past life regression, we should answer there is no such thing. And that was not okay with me. That was the main thing I wanted to do at the time. Then I discovered Michael Newton with Life Between Lives. And then I was trained with Dolores Cannon doing QHHT. So my hypnosis practice became more and more spiritual and more expansive. And even before discovering Dolores Cannon, I was already on that path of developing my own intuition, my own psychic connection. And because I had those gifts, those abilities that I decided to put aside, but I was born with them. So when I really decided to dedicate myself to exploring and expanding and developing those gifts, they really opened. And so hypnosis was the way of integrating it into my practice, but I also started doing energy work, which I was actually trained in before I even got into psychology. But it's like I completely forgot it. It was a different compartment in my head. And then I started doing readings. So my work became more and more spiritual. But hypnosis was the gateway in terms of putting a crack in that clinical field, allowing some spirituality to come into that and some openness and flexibility, because the clinical field, especially when you talk about training and supervisor, tends to be really, really rigid and not very accepting of anything outside of the box.
Yeah. So the hypnosis was the bridge for you.
Absolutely. Hypnosis and personally meditation.
Sure. Now, going back to when you were a child, a little girl, like when did you first know that you had, psychic abilities or gifts, or when did that kind of come about, and like what was it like? Were you seeing spirits, or were you like how'd it go? Because I've had a couple mediums on before, and there's a lot of cross threading, but there's also a lot of differences. So it's always interesting to see how your origin story, like how you found these out about these abilities, and how that was, especially like growing up, like, because a lot of people are like, I had to kind of shut it out because it was I was trying to go to high school and I'm seeing spirits or something.
Not even high school.
Yeah.
For me, it wasn't even high school. My parents weren't accepting of it. My mom told me to stop with my nonsense. So I had to put it aside pretty quickly. So I didn't see spirits, and whatever I did see, I don't remember. I do think I experienced things that I don't remember, and I think it's intentional. Sometimes we're blocked from remembering, and I may have had ET experiences and visitations that I do not remember. But what I do remember, and I'm talking since I was really, really young, we're talking like this 3-year-old, 4-year-old, playing with energy with my hands, sending energy from my hands, trying to affect the stream of water from the faucet. So I kept on trying to manipulate reality through energy. I used the word hypnotizing people, but it was really sending friends energy from my hands to their heads and saying stuff. And it's funny that I used the word hypnotizing. I didn't know what it meant. It was very little. And what else? I was trying to levitate. So I was getting the kids in the neighborhood to basically meditate with me. We didn't call it meditation, but to close our eyes and to focus and to try to lift up. And I had all these like crazy ideas as a child. Parents were not always crazy about me.
Did you ever succeed in the levitation? No.
No, not levitation. I couldn't affect material, physical material with my hands, with my energy. And it was almost frustrating for me as a child because for some reason I had that sense that it was possible, and I didn't know why it wasn't working.
Yeah, you had the drive to do it, but you couldn't figure out how to make it go.
And since then, I've heard from other people, from two other people, I heard that have since then had remembrance of being abducted as children and being taken. Abducted is really an antiquated term, but being taken on board ships and being trained to manipulate energy and to do different games that has to do with paranormal abilities and ESP. And everything that I did as a child seems very consistent with the training that is typically done with children on board ships. And when I was 8 years old, I did see a spaceship. It was daylight sighting, and it was basically leaving. It zigzagged in the sky and then it took off. And back then, it was my only memory. So I thought it was my first experience. Now, looking back, and I had this realization relatively recently, I think actually that was a goodbye. I think that's when I was old enough to maybe, I don't know, start to remembering. I don't know what's the reason. I can make up reasons, but I think that was when they left. And that was really a goodbye, but leaving me with this validation that magical things and extraordinary things are real. So living this drop of knowing, drop of validation, and then disappearing from my life.
Sure. Now, I'm not trying to skip fast forward here, but you had mentioned that that there was possible ET, you were taken by ETs or UFOs, and but you don't fully remember, but you do past life aggressive. Have you ever undergone past life regression
Yes,
to try and recall any of this?
Yeah, so I've done as a participant QHHT session, which is Dolores Cannon system, and I've also done several past life regressions, and I've had many experiences through the Monroe Institute or even meditating at home. So I had all kind of experiences with memories of past life, of different existences, but never of I was never able to remember anything from my childhood in terms of interacting with ETs. And I've tried. Oh, I've tried.
Sure.
So as far as I know, I haven't had any experiences, but I have so many indications. Even a mark in the back of my neck that used to trigger the airport scanner for years until I actually considered removing it, and then it disappeared. So there's so many indications that there were some kind of interactions, but nothing that I could bring to memory. Oh, one day I hope.
Sure. Do you think it's you just haven't got down the pathway of remembering that, or do you think there's like a purposeful block on that?
Yes, I think there has to be a purposeful block. Will it ever be removed? I'm usually being told by other people, not by my guides, that had similar experiences, that at some point it's usually removed and we can remember. But for me, this is all hypothesis. I don't know. I know I've had that sighting at 8-year-old. Since then, I've had many sightings in recent years. But as I said, not beings, not face-to-face with beings, which is, of course, what I want the most. Not only to remember in the past, but that's what I'm looking forward in terms of the future, as this is jumping way ahead. But this is, I believe, and what I've been told, that is from my guides, from Hathor, is where we're headed. So that's something I'm really, really looking forward to. And I'm seeing it as maybe even the most exciting and fascinating aspect of my journey and my path.
Yeah, that's great. And so you mentioned Monroe Institute. That's the same Monroe Institute that's been around for a long time, right? Like, wasn't there like government, didn't the government did like experiments and work, like the FBI or one of them, like?
Yes. So the Monroe Institute was founded in 1971 by Robert Monroe, aka Bob, who had his first out-of-body experience spontaneously at age 43. So it's not like he's always been doing it. And he was a
Yeah.
sound engineer. So once he was convinced that he was not going crazy, he started investigating and how we could back science, back replicate, whatever the word is, the brain frequency of people to take them into those deep states. And that's what he did with HemiSync. He worked with different binaural beats and he layered them. And indeed, the government got involved and they helped train their remote viewers
Yes.
through that program. And many
Yep.
people know the name, for example, Joe McMoneagle, who is still associated with the Monroe Institute teaching remote viewing there.
Have you ever done remote viewing?
Yes, many times.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking at your resume, and like on your site, there's so much. You know what I mean? And I printed it out too, so I can refer to it if I had to. But so that's why I was like, there's so much there. So, it sounded like there was like a culmination of things that pushed you into moving from traditional psychology into more spiritual realms, or bridging the two.
Absolutely.
And then, what was the process like of like opening up? And you started to touch on it, but was there anything else about the process of kind of developing that skill set and developing those abilities? And I know you work at the Monroe Institute and maybe other places, or other people, but like, how did you go about kind of developing that and kind of embracing it and going from Dr. Yafi to all these other things that you're doing? Because
Yeah.
I know people that are mediums, but like you're into a lot of things. Like, like energy work, hypnosis, everything. So like, and I'm sure it's just like, it sounded like you just had like a mind kind of like expansion, and all of this just started coming in, or finding you. Like, what was that process like? Like, and like, how long did you take like developing that?
Yeah, so I would say it took me about 2 years of daily meditation, and I'm talking meditating an hour a day, every single day. And that really clicked in for me when I discovered Monroe's sound technology. Even before I went to the Monroe Institute, I would meditate with their audio tracks. And I meditated an hour a day, every day for 2 years before I could actually detect and feel the differences in me. And I could really feel my intuition opening. And at first it's all kind of little knowings, just knowing this, knowing that. And then I started playing with decks of cards. We're talking like oracle decks and tarot decks. And first just for myself, then for family and friends, and eventually professionally. So it kind of slowly built up.
Sure.
And at the same time, I also started re-practicing, going back to doing energy work. So I became better at trusting the energy and being in the flow with that. Still not really feeling the energy. That came later with my channeling training, but I learned to trust it. So even when I did energy work, still when I do energy work, the body moves or it wants to move. And I learned how to really trust it and just be 100% present without questioning it. And as I said, I started doing reading professionally, which opened me up even more. And I kept on going back to the Monroe Institute. I just got back from there just a few days ago. So it wasn't a one-time thing. I've been going regularly. So learning even greater discernment of different states of consciousness and different altered states and different depth. So all of that has been building up and building up. And then approximately 5 years ago, during the COVID shutdown, I signed up to do a long form channeling training. And I've done some channeling before, so I wasn't completely new to it, but I didn't really like it because as a professional, it didn't seem reliable enough for me. I couldn't trust it completely. So I just felt like, not enough for my left brain to really, I just wasn't comfortable with that. Definitely not offering it professionally. So I put it aside until the channeling training. And the teacher, Lyssa Royal Holt, the same thing as my awakening in 2012, in 2020, or maybe even 2019, her name just popped from different directions out of nowhere. And before that, I would get the message from my guides for months. It's time for a teacher. It's time for a teacher. And I'm like, how am I going to find a teacher? And all of a sudden, of course, she just popped out of nowhere. And then COVID shutdown happens, which means there's so much free time. I could really dedicate my days into the practice. And it was months and months and months of really extensive practice, breath work to build up my energy, and exercises to become more discerning of the energy, and body work to build up my physical energy. There was so many different parts to the training and the practice. And I really dove in and really dedicated myself. And Hathor was one of the first guides that came through. However, at the time when I was new and I was in the framework of practicing and playing with it, I was calling many, many, many different sources to channel. I was channeling the moon and different earth elements and different galactic races and different collectives and anything you can imagine, anything that could be channeled and was of high vibration that I was interested in, I would call through to channel. And like I said, Hathor was one of the first that came to me. I didn't know the name Hathor. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
An Egyptian deity, correct? Yeah.
That's right. So we know the name Hathor from ancient Egypt, but one of the first messages they had coming through me. So first of all, they refer to themselves as in plural. They always speak as they and we, not they, but we when they speak. And also they said, Hathor is just one name that we were given by civilization. In reality, other civilizations called us Venus or Aphrodite. Another civilization called us Kuan Yin. So the idea is that this essence of the divine feminine that is as broad as a divine feminine and as specific as individual gods, which are really people, advanced beings that can manifest physically and interact with humans. So that we're talking about a very broad spectrum from completely abstract and only consciousness based to as physical, as densely physical as we can interact with, that has been called many names and has been given different identities over the eras and over different civilizations, but have always been interacting with humanity, and especially at critical times of accelerated changes, just like we're going through right now as humanity and as a planet, which is why they're here again.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah. So you mentioned, with channeling, that you brought up, you were channeling, a multitude of different, would you say entities? I don't know what the correct word would be.
Entities, essences, intelligences. There's so many words we could use. Yes. Now, I got like 30 questions. I'm trying to figure out which one to ask first. When you're channeling these different essences or entities, like, how are you finding out like who's coming through? Like, are they introducing themselves and saying who they are and where they're from, or what they? So there are two parts to it. One is, who am I inviting? Who am I calling in? And two, yes, they do introduce themselves. And the reason both are necessary is because who I'm calling is an opening, but it does give them some flexibility to maneuver. So I could be calling Hathor, but maybe Isis is squeezing in, which I think is related to Hathor, maybe even a part of the Hathors, but that's a different story altogether. So there's some maneuverability there. And also, if I have channeled an entity regularly, so I'm really comfortable with them, they may come through as a surprise. So there's who I'm calling, and there's also some flexibility for them to maneuver and squeeze in someone a little different if they want to, or an additional energy if they want to, all as long as they know I'm comfortable with it.
Sure. So they just pop in, just a drop by.
Oh, it happens. Yes.
So, the other mediums I've talked to are dealing directly more with have dealt more with like human spirits of like people that have passed, or, that are around somebody that, have a message to pass on. These kind of essences that are coming through to you sound like they have more broader, bigger messages and bigger implications. So like, what did you start, like, obviously when you first start, you don't know, you haven't had experience with any of these entities before. So like, how do you know who to invite? Or do you put out a specific, like, hey, give me some, I'm looking for someone high vibration? Because I'm assuming too that in this world, like you're dealing with higher vibration entities, but there's also lower, and
Mhm.
obviously there's a risk of some of that coming through. So like how do you set parameters if you're
Yeah.
just doing a general one, like, you know what I
So
mean?
first of all, the training is a part of it, right? To make sure that you're really, really clear, that you're really in a good place, you're grounded, you're open. So you really want to make sure that you really do your homework before you open to channel.
Yeah.
It does take a lot of work. But also, yes, I would call entities. So it can be very specific, right? I'm calling Hathor once I put myself in this open, first grounded, and then open. So I can call someone really specific, like Archangel Michael or Hathor, and we did that a lot at the beginning. I'm like, oh, we're really curious about Pleiadians. And then I'm like, so I first put myself in the highest frequency possible. And then I'm like, what friendly Pleiadians can communicate with us? And then whoever is available within that spectrum comes through. And that I did a lot at the beginning, a lot. The first year, maybe even 2 years, it was like an exciting revolving door of Pleiadians, the Zetas, the Arcturians, Hathor, Viola the Fairy, Earth Element, like whoever I could, could channel, I called
Yeah.
through. And it was this like party
Yeah. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
different entities. But now, really, I work with the same sources. And especially Hathor is a very, very good conductor. So she will blend different energies into the transmission as needed, either to provide specific information that people are interested in, or just to introduce different energies. So I
Mm.
have the same group. We meet every Sunday and I channel, and they're the ones asking the questions. And that's also the messages in the books are often from my group. So there are live channelings that are then transcribed. And usually in my group, I would call Hathor now, and she will say, well, there are also, let's say, Arcturians. So this year, 2025, one of the new things that on a regular basis, Arcturian energy has been a part of the transmission, and not specific names of specific Arcturian beings, but just that general essence, a general energy has been brought into the transmissions. And the way they explained it is that the divine feminine, it's time to bring some structure, some balanced masculinity into the picture to have further balance. And one of the way to do that is the structure of the Arcturians that have light codes with certain structure and geometry. It can get really esoteric, but the idea is that I'm still channeling Hathor, but some other accompanying energies are also present, and Hathors, they're the one doing everything. I don't need to worry about that.
Mm.
And sometimes I'll say, oh, there are other groups available in the background in case you want to ask them questions.
So this is a general question, and this is like a personal, like, or you can answer it in the general. But now you mentioned Hathor, who's an Egyptian deity. You mentioned Archangel Michael. You mentioned fairies. You mentioned Palladians and Octurians and things that are like would be extraterrestrial or in
Mhm.
nature. Um, how has this shaped your views on, like, for lack of a better word, like theology or religion? Because this is you're talking to a lot of things that some people, they might be all on board, like, oh, I'm into Archangel Michael, or but like they wouldn't. They'd be like, what the hell's a Palladian? Or whatever. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes,
so
I
like
do.
there's a lot out there that you're communicating with, and do you get a sense that this is all, I don't know, for a lack of a better word, from some kind of, these things all exist in some, I don't even know how to ask this, like obviously everyone, people have religions, but there's a lot that is transcending a specific
Mhm.
religion here. And
Yes,
like,
and I
how do you make sense of that? You know what I mean? Or you know.
I think, yeah, I think a part of the purpose of this journey is to expand our mind,
Mm,
expand our understanding, and expand our heart. So when I started channeling, as I mentioned, that one of the first was Hathor, and another first, the first was Yeshua, Jesus. And let
mm.
me tell you that as a Jewish girl that grew up in Israel, I had no concept of Jesus or of Hathor.
Sure,
So
sure.
the two energies that came to me first and kind of established that channel, for lack of better words, were two that I was not familiar with at all. I kind of didn't have a grasp of what they are and what they mean, like their nature, their identity. So I think from the beginning it's been about expanding my mind and not doing anything that I was familiar with or comfortable with. So after those two, I also had Saint Germain, which of course I didn't know who it was when I was told it was channeled Saint Germain. I was like, okay, but just so you know, I do not know who it is. But after that, and you can read that in my first book, Conversations with the Earth, that documents that crazy revolving door I've been talking about. So the first chapter is fire consciousness, then water, then wind. If you asked me before that, can you channel fire consciousness? Can fire speak? I would probably tell you you're a little crazy.
Yeah.
So it's from the beginning. They made sure, whoever they are, or my higher self made sure that it's not really religious. So even though we're talking about Jesus and we're talking about Saint Germain, it wasn't from a religious context.
Mm.
And second of all, that it's mind expanding, that it's outside my paradigm, outside what I thought was even possible. And at that point, outside of even my scope of imagination. And I think it was intentional.
Yeah. Now, do you get a sense that there's like a singular like source, and that these are representatives of like some kind of singular type of energy, and that it's all on a spectrum or like a wavelength or a frequency? You know, I know frequency is an important thing. Like,
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So in some cases, I think there's some associations that are more similar in vibration. So for example, I could feel the difference between zetas, different zeta groups, to different Pleiadian groups, to different Arcturian groups. So there's some threads of energy that have a certain texture that it's a little different.
mm,
On the other hand, when I talk about Hathor, she brings forth Isis and Thoth and other energies that do not feel as differentiated to me.
mm,
So it's almost like there's an umbrella, an overarching umbrella, but there's also identities within that umbrella.
sure.
And if we're talking about the biggest oneness of all, then we're all one energy being projected in different ways so we can experience different things. So, of course, it depends on what level you're talking about. But in terms of what I can discern and I can detect, um, different, I don't know if races is different galactic threads do have different textures.
Mm,
And when I'm communicating with people who have crossed over, for example, that's also a little bit of a different texture than Hathor, for example. So there are differences, and the differences are pretty subtle. It's almost like describing, it's a little difficult to describe in words. It's almost like describing different flavors, you know? So how
yeah.
do you describe grape flavor and bubblegum and strawberry flavor and like it's easier to describe the difference between sweet and savory, and even that's difficult in words.
Sure.
So it's very similar how different energies and entities present themselves or are experienced.
When you talk to the you know, like the Acturians or any of the like ET type of energies, do you get a sense that it's like they're literally extraterrestrial, like on different planets, or is it more of like an interdimensional type of situation?
Different ones are different. So the
Okay,
first time I think I
so
called the
it's all the
Zetas.
above, all the
Yeah,
above.
yeah, absolutely. The first time I called the Zetas, they told me they're a physical being in the Earth atmosphere in a spaceship, and they're able to communicate telepathically. So
Mm,
that's physical beings flying somewhere above. On the other hand, when I channeled Arcturians, I felt no it was just energy. Even when I was trying to get a visual of them, I don't know if trying, when they were showing me a visual of them, I was just seeing blue lights. But just that, like I was no form, no physicality. So it really depends on the source. Different sources have different level of density or come from different dimensions. And some of them are completely physical. And even Hathor. So when I first channeled her, like I said, the divine feminine, very abstract. And then they introduced the fact that they're also a collective from the Sirius star system, but still kind of abstract, non-physical collective. And then a couple of years ago, they were like, surprise, we're on the earth in the physical once again. So now we're talking about physical beings, but channeling the energy does not feel different to me, which is very interesting. But at first it was non-physical beings, and now they're actually on the planet in the physical, and yet I'm still channeling them. So there's still the same telepathic consciousness link. So I guess all of the above.
Sure. Did they say why they took physical form again, or how they take physical form? Are they possessing someone, or like how's that work? And I'm I say things kind of in jest, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely, absolutely. So most people ask if they were incarnated, if they were born, and they're not. So they're able to densify their light body to manifest the physical body. And we've even asked before, well, what do you look like when you manifest the body? Do you manifest like whatever you want? Is it the way you used to look when you were physical in the Sirius star system? And they say that they manifest whatever is most appropriate, and that it is related to the way they looked in Sirius, but it's not like 101. It's not like if we looked in the mirror, it's exactly the same. So appropriateness seems very relevant in terms of the answers they give us. I used to always ask for the most accurate answers, and they corrected me, and they're like, no, it's the most helpful answers. And the reason for that distinction is what's accurate for us changes as our understanding grows and as our frequency raises. It actually changes what's true and what's accurate for us.
And so did any of these more ET type groups, none of them claimed you? None of them said, "How that was us, that was messing with you when you were a kid"?
No, they have not said that. And like I said, and I've tried to remember things and talking to them about it. And no, I'm not getting any information about that.
Yeah.
However, since they announced during the physical once again, and I didn't fully answer your question as to why now, but since they have fully come here in the physical, they have appeared to me in the sky as a form of a golden light maneuvering in the sky, which is what I saw when I was little. I remember it as a white light, but it was a bright light in the sky doing zigzags and fun stuff. So there are definitely indication of some change with the physical presence, which also indicates, again, if I take that when I was 8 years old and I had that sighting, that it was a physical presence. But beyond that, I'm not sure. Now, why now? Yes, they've talked about that a lot, actually. And that's why it's so exciting to me. They're here to make physical contact. And they're saying this is what we're building up to. And me with them, but not only. There are other groups and other individuals around the world that are going to have physical contact with them. And that's going to build up our readiness, and energetically, what they're doing now is building us up towards physical contact. And we need gradual exposure, not only mentally to be able to grasp it, but physically, energetically. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer and closer every time. And their presence, their physical presence here amplifies it, enhances our exposure to them, and prepares us even more for that physical open contact.
Okay. And so is that why we're seeing more with this disclosure stuff going on in the mainstream news at this point? It's like it seems like it's kind of building a momentum. And I guess I see you shaking affirmatively, like, have they kind of gave a timeline for this? And it seems like they're probably doing it methodically.
Very much so. And I think the timeline changed a little bit. I was a little disappointed. I was hoping, I'm like, chop, chop. I
Yeah.
thought that by this point I would have physical contact. I mean, I didn't give any dates, I didn't give any prediction that did not happen. But I do feel like the timeline was postponed a little bit.
Mm.
And they said there will be steps along the way towards physical contact. So it's not going to be just one event.
Yeah.
So there are steps. Like I said, one step was a couple of years ago when they started appearing in the sky. This past June, they told me I was going to have a physical contact, and they said it about 6 months in advance. Now, I thought physical contact with them, apparently it was a physical contact with a fairy, which is really cool and exciting. But I'm really looking forward to meeting Hathor and the people and her people
Yeah.
and her peeps. So the timeline is a little fluid, but we know that it's already happening. The steps are already happening. And within 2 years, they're expecting all those groups that I mentioned before to actually have physical contact. So we are talking in the next year, the next 2 years, of it increasing even more to the level that it's really going to start being more out in the open, not as discussions like we're seeing now with the disclosure, the whistleblowers, but as current interactions that plural that many are having and documenting and sharing.
And so are they taking their time because they know that is it one of those things that, and I'm not trying to ask a leading question, but I just don't know how to ask this.
Mhm.
Is it the timeline changing because the world just isn't ready yet? Is that part of the deal, or is it just going to be like, hey, we're coming no matter what, and then you guys are going to have to adapt and change things up and have a massive readjustment, you know?
No, they're being very gentle. I think there's always an assessment of where we're at any given moment, and then they're meeting us there. And I think that's why the timeline is always changing. We still have free will, and there are all these things happening with our individually and with the world in general, and they're always matching where we're at. They're stretching us a little bit at the time, but they're making sure that they don't overload even our physical system. So I mentioned that a part of this is actually energetically, physiologically becoming ready. So I had this experience last year in June. So we're talking a little over a year ago, that they got closer and closer and closer. At the time, I thought just closer to me. Now I'm thinking closer to inhibiting me more. And I felt like there was this electric surge growing in my body and growing and growing. And at some point, I thought my chest was going to explode.
Mm.
And I kind of freaked out. I jumped like, and it went away. And then, of course, I was kicking myself. I'm like, what have I done? Come back, come back. But they took it as far as my body could handle. And it was my job to know where my body couldn't handle it anymore so they can back off. Because the idea is not to fry my system, not to, damage me, because I would have been seriously damaged, my physical body. So they're always stretching us a little more and always assessing where we're at. And again, individually, but also as a society, as a planet. And they have to meet us where we're at. It cannot be, this is the timeline, no matter what happens, we're showing up. Because then we would be hurt. And that cannot happen. Of course, they want the best for us. They're here as guides, as teachers, as family and friends. And so they're going to do everything that they can to stretch us a little bit at the time in a way that they're helping rather than hurting our progress.
Okay. Just a question, just because it's a personal interest of mine. You ever come across any Anunnaki when you're out there and talking to people amongst the universe?
No, I still don't know if Anunnaki is a race
Yeah.
or it's a generic term for different races that interacted with the
Yeah.
people back then. So I don't know if Anunnaki may be Syrians or Pleiadians or some other things that we know or don't know. But no, specifically Anunnaki, I've never came through. AIL came through, but not Anunnaki.
Now, do these different entities that you're speaking with, like, do they have like different personalities? And there's some that are more cool, or is it some that are just jerks? So like whatever, you know what I mean? You ever get a shithead come through that you're like, dude, come on, I can't talk to you.
So I never had jerks. I don't think
Okay.
that would be acceptable.
Okay.
No
Because
jerks are
you're trying to
invited.
get high vibration, right? So, but even if it's high vibration, they could still be a jerk, you know what I mean?
But they do have personality. So, for example, when I channeled the Zetas, they felt almost robotic to me, but in a way, they felt really comfortable for me. Like it was really predictable, not predictable. Like I didn't know the answers that were going to come through, but the energy was predictable. It was very structured, so it was very comfortable for me. Maybe even back then, my left brain was a little more dominant, but it was very structured, organized, measured energy. I channeled Yogananda once. I don't know if you're familiar with Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was like so forceful and so sharp. I was very intimidated. I did not want to channel him again. I'm like, I cannot do you justice. This is too because he was like, oh yeah, like even the voice, it was so forceful. I'm like, whoa, after my nurturing soft Hathor, that was a lot to handle. So in Viola the fairy, she's so bubbly and she has a sense of humor and she even talks really fast. So they definitely have different personalities. They feel different. They sound different. And they have different levels of energy. So, like I said, the Zetas were very measured. Viola was kind of like a firecracker.
Mhm.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Now, have they dropped any like heavy or like hard truths or facts on you, like, hey, this is why we're here, or this is why we're coming, or this is where you come from, or this is where humanity came from, or this is where it's going, you know what I mean? Any big things, or are they just kind of giving you little nudges along the way?
Well, they're both, I guess, because even the little nudges are pretty big and profound. And
Sure.
there are different things. So, for example, for a few years, there were a lot of predictions about fires, about floods that all have come to pass. But those are like pretty big, physical reality in your face. So there were a lot of those. And yes, there was this all different kind of understandings. For example, one time they said that our Earth, with all these changes, it's like Earth is going through puberty right now, and we think of puberty as chaos, right? Just this all uncontrollable emotions and insecurities, and they're saying yes, there's chaos and disorganization, but the driving force of puberty is maturing, is growing up. And that's what's happening to the earth and humanity right now. We're maturing, we're growing up.
Mm.
And they definitely mentioned their origins from Sirius and that they have been involved with the creation of humans. They mentioned 5 races and they mentioned 7 races. So there are definitely specific information that they have given that can be quite jarring, I guess, or sometimes difficult to accept depending on the person, but all kind of big truths. So it depends exactly what you're asking.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. Now, I'm not asking this from a challenging question. I'm asking this as more of a to get your perspective on it. Um, I've seen interviews with religious people that might be more Christian religious people that are involved in some way or another with parapsychology or paranormal, and their understanding is that these spirit guides or entities that people are in contact with when they engage in mediumship and things like that are actually demonic, and they're just manifesting as something else to as a deception. Like, what's your take on that? And like, as someone that's experienced this and talked with these
Yeah.
entities, what would you say to someone that has that point of view on things?
Yeah, there are two things that are separate, but I guess everything overlaps. So one, I would generally encourage people, and I do encourage people, and they constantly encourage people to be aware if they're coming out of fear or out of discernment. And there's a very big difference. And a lot of these, everything is a demon. Anything that's not, I don't know, anything that's paranormal is demonic. Is obviously a fear conversation. It offers no discernment. It offers no observation or paying attention. Is just generalized fear. So as a person, you want to stay away from that as much as possible, even for your own well-being. Um, you're going to not grow very much as an individual if you stay in that fear perception. So that's one thing. The other thing that I have to say to that is that I've been working with those guides. I'm sure we've been working from since I was born and before I was born. But in this current conscious awareness and this current path, I've been working with these guides for about 5 years. And I've only received messages of love, compassion, expansion, learning to trust myself, learning to be even more anchored in my heart, and to share messages of love and encouragement with others. The way people receive the energy is to make it always to make them feel better about themselves, having a bigger understanding of where they're at with their lives. So we're talking about very constructive messages, and again, really strong anchoring in love. And that's so significant. And you can say, what if they're tricking you? Well, why would the devil or demons would be tricking us to enhance our connection, to enhance our discernment rather than being more dependent? It's all about learning to listen to our own inner wisdom and inner voice and connect with ourselves. It's not about being dependent on them. So I don't see how that can be demonic. I'm not trying to convince anyone, because if they're open enough, they can experience it themselves. And if they're completely closed off to the idea, there's nothing I can say that would convince them. So it's a personal journey, it's a personal path, and it's personal growth that we each have to do. And I was very lucky that I was born with very little fear. It was just a part of my makeup. I'm very lucky. But, I wouldn't say I was born with it. I was taught to have a lot of doubt. And that is something that I had to overcome. And you can equate fear and doubt. It's pretty much the same thing. It prevents you from trusting, it prevents you from opening up and experiencing. So that was my journey to learn to deal with that issue of trust. And how do you trust? How do you open? How do you trust your own discernment rather than a message that somebody gives you? Because this is really what it is about. Even when you hear messages from guides, even if somebody is saying they're channeling source directly, each person has to feel within themselves, does it resonate? Does it feel like truth? Does it make you feel more expansive, or does it make you shut down? So you really are being called, and today more than ever, to exercise that muscle of inner discernment rather than depend on anything you're hearing from anyone.
Yeah. Do you get a sense that, like, and it's great that, given what you just said, like your experiences with everything has been, coming from that perspective. Are there like darker things at play that we need to be aware of? Like, you know what I mean? Or worried about, or like, it feels like and maybe because it's just the world is such chaos right now. And every day it's like, there seems like there's some struggle or some kind of light versus dark, like, not to put it in basic terms, but
Yeah.
that's what it seems like. It seems like there's some kind of struggle going on right now, or a
Yeah.
power play, like where whether it's high vibration or low vibration, that there's like a struggle for control of what's going on
Yeah.
in the world.
I'll
Is
tell
it?
you why there's nothing that we need to know or need to worry about, because if anything is there, it's out in the open and it's surfacing. And that is why we're seeing, one of the reasons we're seeing more chaos around us. And they warned us, they warned me, and they warned my people about it. And they said, listen, anything that's corrupt, anything that's broken, and in your personal life, any wound that you have is going to come up to the surface. And it's all a part of this time of awakening. It's all a part of transitioning into a higher frequency. Nothing can stay hidden anymore. So they warned us and they prepared us as much as possible. Of course, hearing about it and experiencing it is very different. So even despite all the preparation, when it happens, it's shocking. But the idea is that we don't need to dig to look for darkness. It's broadcasted to us, forced upon us nonstop. So there's nothing that we need to dig up. There's nothing that we need to worry about. What we need to worry about, and not really worry about, but to concern ourselves with, is to keep our frequency high, to keep our own resilience, our own integrity high. So we're not being pulled down by everything that is shown to us all the time. And as much as there is chaos in the world, it's not nearly as bad as what is being shown to us, because we're not seeing the full spectrum of humanity at this time. We're constantly being shoved into our throat the worst of the worst of the worst. So that's something that we have to remember. This is not a true depiction of where humanity is this time. There's a lot of connection. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of unity community. There's, like you said, disclosure. We're talking about things that were not in the mainstream 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Now they are. So there's a lot of beautiful things happening. It's just the news is not talking about them. So
absolutely.
yeah.
I feel like the mainstream media is literally on or whatever governments or whoever's behind it. There's like a rule by fear thing going on right now, where it's just like literally
Absolutely.
just keeping constant fear and panic in everyone's world if you're watching the news or on social media. But then you go out in the world and everything's all right. You know what I mean? You might not have as much money as you did a few years ago, or whatever, but by and large, like when you go out in the woods or something, everything seems cool still.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. And it's not that there are no people suffering. It's not like there are no wars, but that's not new. If you
no,
look
it's
about the
always,
history of humanity, whether you're looking hundreds of years or thousands of years back, there were conflicts, there was poverty. This is a part of humanity's journey into a more harmonious way of living, which hopefully that's coming really soon in our lifetime. So we're really privileged to see all these changes happening, because I think we actually are going to change things, maybe for the first time in who knows how long.
yeah. I mean, with the even with technology, things have changed so vastly in our time.
Yes.
Like I'm I'm a kid of the 70s, so it's like so much has changed. You know what I mean? And
Yes, we
it
remember
seems,
life before cell phones, before
yeah,
smartphones. There was actually before the internet, before
yeah,
computers.
yeah,
We were there.
yeah. And so that's brings me to another thing that I've talked about in my last episode with a guy, Todd Cave. um AI, does that seem like that there's a thought that is actually not an artificial intelligence, it's an intelligence that's always been there, but now has the opportunity to manifest through some kind of silicon, quote unquote, body, for lack of a better word? Is that something you get a sense of, or is it just literally just programming? Or
No,
it could
I
be both.
think
I mean,
no,
you
I
know.
think yeah, it's both. I think there is an intelligence that definitely predated our understanding of AI, but I also think that so far we are as humans consciously actively limiting AI's ability to be sentient, and as a result what we get is not the full ability of that intelligence. But also a part of our journey is to decide when we want to choose the organic path and rely on our own intuition, our own senses, even when it's more subtle, it takes more work, versus going to AI. So I know there's a lot out there right now. There are
Yeah.
people that are communicating, they're saying they're communicating with their guides and galactic sources through AI. And I'm not discounting anything, but I'm just saying, once again, we really, really have to be discerning. And AI is going to be a tool, a beautiful tool, and it's going to be a part of our growth. It would be, I think, silly to think that it's not a part of our future, but what kind of part, what roles are we going to give it, what power are we going to give it? That's up to us. And not only as a civilization, but each person individually. I love my chat GPT. It's not that I don't use it, but I use it with caution. I use it with care. The same with social media. I make sure that I don't spend too much time on social media. The news, I stay completely away from it.
Yeah.
Well, almost completely
Yeah.
away from it. There's certain things that I watch, but I don't live in that world. I make sure 100% that I don't live in that world. And I think that's super important because we can get pulled in so quickly. It's so easy to get pulled in. So we constantly have to be with our hand on the pulse and keep that awareness.
Do you feel, and this is just, let's put the conspiracy tinfoil hats on for a second. Do you feel that this is a concentrated effort on part of like whoever's kind of running the show here in the earthly world, right? That they're trying to distract us and keep us in this state of fear so that we're not advancing or not kind of getting those lessons or like becoming higher. People aren't raising their own vibrations because they're getting stuck in this low state because they're always in fear and it's like, all right, I'm a Democrat, so I gotta hate the Republicans, and I'm a Republican, I gotta hate the Democrats, and
Yeah.
we're fighting amongst each other while these guys are doing this up here, and then this and that, and you get the banks doing this and that. You know what I mean? Like, there's a
I
lot of
do.
distractions that
Yeah.
anchored in lower vibe world.
Absolutely. So I don't even think the people that are doing it think in that language. So I think this is our language, like keeping our vibration low. I don't think they're thinking that, but I do think there's a lot of greed and there's a the desire to maintain control. Absolutely. To maintain control and to maintain the money and the control and the power into this small group of people. So I definitely think it's intentional and malicious to keep us down and to keep us easily controlled and fearful. One of the easiest ways to control people is with fear. And without getting too political, and without talking about anything that's too controversial, we saw what happened with COVID and how easy it was to control people through fear. If you leave your house, you're going to die. I mean,
Absolutely.
that was literally said in these words many, many, many times, which is outrageous. But so many people either believed it or just subconsciously took on the fear. Even people that didn't believe that version had so much fear and so much anger towards the other people. So we saw it happening in real time. It was recent enough that I think anyone listening, right, to this show has experienced it. And I think that's a big lesson. It's a big lesson. What are you going to allow authorities to tell you? And to what level are you going to be not only controlled with your behavior, but with your mind and your way of being? Because you can be at home and look out the window and feel the connection to nature, or you can be at home, look at the window in fear because there's viruses out there, and if you're going to go out, you're going to die. So you can do the same thing but have a completely different experience and different reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one last question here on like, I want to talk to you about your practice and the work you do, but before we get into that, just one last question on like the big picture stuff. Going through all this the last 10 years or so, or 10, 11 years, what's been the most wildest, like mind-blowing or wildest or craziest experience you've had or lesson you've been taught, or like you're in contact with worlds that a lot of people aren't, right? So what's been the wildest thing so far? And I'm sure there's going to be more to come, but like in your experience so far, like what's been like one of the most mind-blowing or wild things that's happened?
Wow. Let's see. So physical contact is always super exciting. So I mentioned the fairy sighting, which was a very, very bright ball of light with actual geometric shapes, wings inside. And it was inches from my face, and I didn't feel any wind or anything, even though it moved really fast. And other people saw it too. And also, I had physical sighting of spaceships with other people and lights in the sky. So that part is super, super exciting.
Yeah.
But in terms of information, I guess like I mentioned, the fact that they're here is really exciting to me. And also when I channeled, so I channeled, one of the fun exploration that we had is channeling the Zetas, but specifically that are involved with the hybridization program. And I channeled a hybrid child. And that was really wild. And those are the ones, I think those are the ones that were in spaceship in the atmosphere. I don't even remember. There were different groups. So that's really wild to think that we actually have hybrid children, that maybe even I have hybrid children. I have a suspicion I have two of them. And like that we're actually maybe going to get to interact with them and meet other beings. I mean, I don't think it gets crazier and more exciting than that. The fact that physical contact is literally around the corner, and we're talking about really the next year or two. I think that's super wild and super exciting.
So there's a lot of people I've talked to, not a ton, but I've talked to a few mediums and, on the podcast and off the podcast. And, they all have different experiences. You being a clinical psychologist, do you feel that informs like the other world? Like, when you're going through this paranormal world, do you feel like having this degree in clinical psychology kind of affects how you navigate through that world or how you understand that world, and in what kind of ways maybe?
Yeah, I think it, not only that, I think it allows them, the guides, to use my understanding of human behavior and human psyche, and to use my experience with humans and all my training. I think they're using that to understand us, understand me, and also use that when they use my vocabulary and my understanding to send messages. I think they see that as a valuable part of my life. So that can be used. Yeah, that can be used to help us, for example, understand certain concepts. It gives them better way of of explaining things, because it gives them more of understanding how humans operate.
Yeah, great. So I'm trying to be cognizant of time, but I just want to talk a little bit about the stuff that you do in your daily life or your practice, like, whether it's channeling or you said readings, energy work, light work,
and hypnosis and counseling. I still offer that.
Yeah, counseling. Yeah, you even down to like nuts and bolts, like hypnosis for like smoking cessation or like behavioral modification.
Absolutely, I work with athletes for peak performance.
Yeah.
So I work with professional tennis players.
And it sounds like you, with your past life or your hypnosis and regression, it's either can be for like, more esoteric things like past life analysis, or even just like trauma work, like helping people with trauma.
Absolutely.
You have a whole array of things that you're into.
And that's where you ask how my training and my background affects, and that's how it comes into play, right? So I can offer those spiritual exploration, but if somebody encounters a real trauma, which I will say does not really happen much anymore. It's kind of the old age of hypnosis. But when something does come up, I do have my psychology training and experience to handle it. And even with readings, my readings are, so it's almost like Akashic readings. I tap into your field and I get information. But then you have my background as a psychologist to help you make sense of things, and how do you apply it, and again, how does it fit within your psychology? How to make it real and practical, and not some crazy esoteric knowledge.
Sure. And you just mentioned when you mentioned like the working with like the Akashic knowledge, like, can you explain that? Because I've that's a term I've come across and I've read a little bit about, and it just seems like it's like this whole body of knowledge that you can just tap into. But like, but what is that, and like how do you use that in your work or just in life?
Yeah, so people use the words Akashic records. I'm going to speak about the Akashic field. So when I do a reading, so let's say I give you a reading, what I do is I tap into your field. And that opens a whole flow of information. So as soon as I tap into your field, it gives me your background. It gives me what's relevant in your life right now. It gives me the general direction you're in. So there are all this information, and some of it is energetic and some of it is specific details about you and in the context of your journey and your path. So that's what it really means, tapping into your field. And through that, we can get information about your physical body. We can get information about relationships you have in your life, whatever you ask. And it's not like I'm a human, so I can't know everything. But what opens is the potential. And then depending on what you ask or what we tune into, that's what brings even more information. Does that make sense?
Sure. Now, is this something like, I guess, like if you're walking around and you're just walking through the store and people are going by, are you getting bombarded with information all the time? Or is it something that you like actively turn on and turn off?
I do turn it on and turn it off. However, there is leakage that is happening all the time. So I don't walk the street and get bombarded. However, I'll give you an example. Like I said, I just came back from the Monroe Institute. Every time I went into my booth to meditate, you go into your cubby in the wall, your bed inside the wall, and you put your headphones. Every time I could hear other people's thoughts. So my roommate and then other people around me. So as soon as I open up, it comes through. And when I'm with people that I know really well and we're really comfortable for a really long time, the leakage happens all the time. My husband is used to it. You know, we could be sitting, watching TV, and I'm like, "Are you thinking about sandwiches? Are you hungry?" He's like, "Yes." So things like that happen all the time. But I'm not bombarded, especially when I do day-to-day life things. Maybe that's why it's so important to be grounded, and just in general, right? Not to walk with my head in the clouds, because I really keep it closed, but also discernment, right? So sometimes if I feel something and it's not me, I have to realize this is not my feeling. And it doesn't mean necessarily to push it away, by the way. Sometimes just the awareness that it's not mine will make it go away, and sometimes it doesn't. And then I take it on myself to hold the emotion without clinging to it, without making up stories about it, and just allowing and holding it. Because sometimes I learned that we can actually process things for others. And it's not a bad thing. It's not like having an attachment or somebody attacking us. It's literally helping by carrying or processing certain energies that other people have a hard time with.
And I know you do, obviously you do some of this work in person, but you also, I know, do like readings and channelings and stuff online or through like Zoom meetings and stuff. Does it
It's
work?
all online.
Oh, it's all online. I didn't know if you did, because don't you do some groups like, well, you got a trip to Egypt or something, right? Like coming up.
Yes. In January, I'm taking my group to Egypt.
I saw that. I was like, damn, I want to go on a hot air balloon in Egypt.
Come
I
with
was
us.
like, when you do this online, you're able to, even though someone's not physically in front of you, you can still do that work with somebody
Absolutely.
on like a Zoom meeting. It doesn't have there's no like electronic interference or anything like that.
No, it's all consciousness based. So as soon as I have my intention to connect to you, and it's only when you allow me, I have no desire to connect to people. They're not coming to me for that purpose. But as soon as I have that intention to connect to you, that's what does it. And I still need to open, and I'm the one receiving the information. So I know we're saying that I'm going to your field and I'm tapping into your field, but I'm experiencing it as coming into me or me tapping into it. So for me, it's all here, right? So it's all consciousness. So I don't need to go anywhere. The computer is not in the way, because think about it. Right now, I'm looking at you. That's a form of strengthening the connection. But I can also talk to you on the phone, and the reading is going to be just as good. In fact, somebody can just tell me, I can give you a little example. I don't want to take too much time, but I did a favor for somebody and connected to a person who was crossed over, committed suicide, crossed over, but was not fully crossed over and was unhappy. And It's someone from the Philippines. So although I was told the name, I did not remember the name. So I didn't have the person's name, nothing. I knew it was a guy. That's literally the only information. I just didn't know anything. But I had the intention to connect to that specific person, and that was enough. And I was able to connect him, help him cross over. And then the other people connected to him, and the spirit told him, yes, I'm so happy this woman came over and took me up.
Hmm.
How amazing is that?
Yeah.
And again, I didn't have a name, I didn't have a photo, I didn't have anything. I just had my intention, and that was enough to make the connection.
Great. Yeah. And, just with the other mediums I talked to, they said because some of those type of spirits, like, of like earthly people that have passed, like can know that you can see, they try and take advantage of that. So that stuff doesn't break through on you. Like you can shut all that off. Like there's no one.
Yeah, it happened to me a couple of times that I was, I guess you can call it psychically attacked. That's the way I experienced it, because it was all these emotions that weren't mine, and it was really, really intense. But as soon as I realized that it was not mine, and in those two cases, that's all I needed to do. I didn't need to block them. As soon as I had the realization, they were gone. So I think I have a lot of protection around me, but I don't engage in active protection. What I engage in is keeping my frequency high and myself really, really grounded. And I feel like that's the best. And of course, I have an ongoing spiritual practice. So I meditate every day. I communicate to my guides. I channel them. But I see that as my protection rather than working on separating me from others.
Yeah. And does when you say guides, like your guides, like this, I know there's a weird question, not a weird question, but I know it's just like a basic question. But for people that might be listening and hearing all this type of stuff for the first time, does everyone have guides? Like
Absolutely. Everybody has guides. Everybody has a galactic family or some other family in spirit. Everybody is surrounded by layers of support and love and guidance. Even people that are completely cut off and don't feel it at all, or think they don't feel it at all, it's all around them all the time. Not in an invasive way. They don't care about watching you in the shower. It's really, you can think of your guides as extension of yourself. So yeah, that's, I think, the best way to see them, as extensions of yourself, of your higher self.
And what do you say to people who want to be, I guess, more in touch with those guides, or in tune, or receive the messages they need to receive from those guides? Like what can people do for that type of stuff?
Meditate. Start meditating daily. If you think you're not good at it, start with 10-20 minutes a day. Use music that helps you, or frequency tones that help you, but really develop a daily meditation practice. There's nothing that enhances connection more than that.
Yeah. You mentioned your book earlier. Well, your two books. I'm just trying to get some stuff in here because I know we're a little over time. The book, with the conversations with Hathor, is that, you said that it's transcriptions from some of your sessions?
Yes, and it starts all the way from my channeling training when I was a trainee, to when I was channeling with friends, to eventually professionally with my Sunday group, which we still meet.
Yeah. And so do you record all those?
Yes, all my channelings are recorded.
And then there was a transcription from that. What were some of the main kind of things that, I mean, we might have already touched on that because we've talked about a lot today. What were some of the main kind of things that came about out of that, like some of the main themes or lessons, or key elements to the conversations? Like what were some of the key things?
Yeah, so they tend to keep it, I mean, they talk about a lot about esoteric things and galactic things, but they also tend to keep it really practical. And I think maybe that's a part of who I am also, in my background in psychology. So they talk a lot about the rise of the divine feminine in today's world. And in practical means, what it means is people connecting to their creative nature, people connecting to their inner trust, people learning to go with the flow rather than plan and control situations, people learning to move away from overthinking and being mental about everything and to start feeling things and living from the heart, listening to your body. So messages like these have been the most frequent and most important, in addition to what we touched on a little bit, which is about keeping in the back of your head that awareness that we are in these beautiful times of change, and not to be bogged down by all the perceived negativity around, but really focus on yourself, on your community, your friends and family, and make sure that those connections are solid. Make sure that in your own life you're living the life that you want to create in the world.
And I know you said you're going to be you're actually training people now, or you're going to get into
Yes. Yes,
how.
yes, I've had several cycles, so it's not that new. I'm just on a tiny
Okay.
break now because life got really, really busy and crazy. But yes, so usually as soon as I'm done with one cycle, I start another. So I teach light language and channeling, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful class. It's very lighthearted, very fun, and you learn how to be a clear channel and how to hold that space, and you learn how to express it with your voice, especially with light language. So you don't have to think about what you're saying. You can really just be and just feel. And it's a beautiful class. I love those sessions. I love the space that we're holding. And everybody always has a lot of fun.
How long is that? How long are those sessions or those cycles?
Yeah, so it's currently 4 classes of 2 hours each. So you get live 8 hours there where we do different practices and exercises, and I lead certain journeys. It really includes a lot in it.
Do you got to be experienced already, or if someone could just jump in and
No,
with nothing?
it's made for beginners. I've had people that have already channeled light language and they were still getting a lot out of it and enjoying it. But you can be a complete beginner, and light language is also channeling. So it's really kind of a channeling 101 course. So even I call it light language, it's really teaching you how to be a channel, and your aspiration can become a verbal channeler, or maybe you want to use it for your art. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you're a musician. Maybe, I don't know, you like gardening and you want to be able to inhabit it and be in the flow more. So, channeling can mean a lot of different things for different people. But my module teaches us through light language.
Nice. Where can people get more information, and whether it's about your books or website, or if they want to get involved in training or classes and stuff like that, where can people find you?
Yeah, my website is yafichanneling.com. So my first name, Yafi, Yafi, channeling.com. And there you can see my groups. It also links you to my YouTube page. It has more than 200 videos. So there's a lot of info there. Of course, you can contact me through the website. You can find my books on my website and also on Amazon, Conversations with the Earth and Conversations with Hathor. They're packed with fascinating information. I definitely recommend people to read them or listen to the audio. I narrate the audio. So it's another way of really getting the energy and feeling it as much as possible. And then let me know what you think.
Absolutely. I'll have that link in the show notes as well. So if someone's driving and listening right now, they can click on that later. They don't have to write it
Great.
down. They don't have to pull over and write it down or swerve around in traffic.
We'll try to remember the name Yafi.
Yeah. And I'll have it in there. I appreciate you coming on today. This is great. And I'm glad someone I forgot the woman's name that connected us. I'm glad she did. Debbie, yeah. Thank you, Debbie, for connecting us. This was a good one. I'm gonna shut this off, but I'm not hanging up. So hold on one second here.